Welcome aboard, friends. This is episode 1128 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today I'll be speaking with Gregory. He is the father of a child with type 1 diabetes. His son Xander was just about 9 years old when this was recorded. Speaking of when this was recorded, Gregory is an engineer on a commercial class fishing vessel. So when we recorded this, he was about 100 miles off the coast of Alaska, which I thought was pretty cool. Found the podcast through his mother and says it changed his life. While you're listening, please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. If you're looking for management help, check out the Diabetes Pro Tip series at episode 1000. It runs from episode 1000 to 1025. And if you're newly diagnosed, perhaps the Bold Beginnings series would be a way for you to start. Look in the feature tab of the private Facebook group for a list or at the top of juiceboxpodcast.com. Or you can just search your audio app for Juicebox Podcast Bold Beginnings. This show is sponsored today by the glucagon that my daughter carries, Gvoke HypoPen. Find out more at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox.
Hi, my name's Gregory, and I'm the father for type 1.
Gregory, we're going to jump right in and find out you are doing this from work. Is that right?
Yeah, from work.
Yeah. Where do you work?
Well, I'm a merchant mariner, which means that I sail on ships, not military ships, just regular old industrial commercial class ships. But the one that I'm on right now is a commercial fishing vessel. We're currently about 100 miles off the coast of Alaska, and we're fishing.
Do you fish with nets or cages, or how does that work?
No, we just have a bunch of dudes on the back deck with fishing poles, and we do the best we can.
Wait a minute. That can't be right.
No.
So every time I eat a shrimp, one guy brought it in on a hook? Is that what you're telling me?
Oh, yeah. Very tiny hooks. We put a whole bunch of them on a line. And, I'm not sure what we'd use for bait for shrimp, because usually shrimp is bait, isn't it? So
what do you do on the ship?
Well, I'm an engineer. So I don't do the fishing. And it is with nets, by the way. I was just joking around. Yeah. So we have this enormous net, and it's kind of shaped like a funnel, and we just come along and we scoop up entire schools of fish at a time.
Wow.
But I'm an engineer, so I just fix the stuff. We actually have a motto in the engine room here. It's in Latin. I don't remember the whole thing, but we keep them fishing in spite of them, because they just like to break stuff all the time. And so it keeps me busy.
Now, are you turning the wrench, or are you pointing to the thing that needs to be turned?
A little bit of both. I've been a wrench turner for quite a number of years, but I got to the point now where I don't have to turn the wrench quite as often as I used to. I still want to. It feels weird, but now I'm, training the next big wrench, and I just get to stand there and look proud.
Yeah. Wow. All right. So you were gone for a second there, but we're gonna obviously have to expect that, since you're, did you say 100 miles offshore?
Yeah, 100 miles off the coast of Alaska right now.
Your internet is still amazing. So anybody else who's
yeah, you can thank Elon Musk for that one.
Oh, is it Starlink you're using?
Yeah.
Wow, that sounds amazing. It really does sound good. It's incredible. I mean, considering you row a boat eight times and leave the shore, and your cell phone won't work anymore. So it's pretty crazy. Other questions about your job. So do you work just for the ship you're on right now, or do you kind of freelance, or are you with a company and you move around?
I work just for the ship that I'm on right now. There are other aspects of the industry where you could do those other things. I've done that a bit in the past, but I prefer to just stick to one vessel It's easier to schedule that way. You can kind of count on when you're coming and going,
Hmm.
and getting familiar with one particular vessel is a lot easier, because you don't have to start over all the time.
Yeah, sure. How long are you gone for when you leave?
It fluctuates with this company. It's between 2 and 2.5 months at a time. The company I was with prior to this, it was 35 days at a time. And then the company I was with prior to that was 28 days at a time.
And how many times a year do you do that?
Well, as many times as you get them in. But when I first started out, I averaged out like roughly 8-9 months out of the year I was at work, which was not fun.
Yeah.
And now I've gotten to a point where it averages out at 6 months a year. So at this 2.5 month deal, I'd go out twice, and then that would be the it for the year.
How do you even find a woman, let alone make a baby, when that's your schedule?
You have to be very fast.
Hi, I'm Gregory.
Yeah.
We're getting married.
Yeah.
I gotta go.
Yeah, I got to go to work. You do find some time. It's not easy. They say if you're not on your third divorce by the time you make chief engineer, you're not doing it right.
Uh-huh.
So I've only got the one, but
You have been divorced once?
Oh yeah, I'm divorced from the mother of my child.
I see. And was it because of the job?
No, actually the job really wasn't an issue. It was just we didn't get along. Let's put it that way.
I was dying for you to go, no, I'm just a dick. That's what I wanted you to say so badly. Okay, so
I mean sometimes, but I try not to be.
Okay, so with your first wife, you have your child who has type 1.
Correct.
How old's your child?
Right now he's 8, but he'll be 9 in September.
Are we going to use his name or no?
Yeah, we can use it.
Okay.
His name is Xander.
Oh, nice.
Hi, Xander.
Xander's 8, going to be 9. How old was he when he was diagnosed?
He had just turned 6.
Okay. So we're almost to 3 years?
Yeah, getting pretty close.
Okay. Now, so you have the job you have, plus you're divorced from his mom. Yep. So what's that look like? When are you with him? And were you together at his time of diagnosis? If you take insulin or sulfonylureas, you are at risk for your blood sugar going too low. You need a safety net when it matters most. Be ready with Gvoke HypoPen. My daughter carries Gvoke HypoPen everywhere she goes because it's a ready-to-use rescue pen for treating very low blood sugar in people with diabetes ages 2 and above that I trust. Low blood sugar emergencies can happen unexpectedly, and they demand quick action. Luckily, Gvoke HypoPen can be administered in 2 simple steps, even by yourself in certain situations. Show those around you where you store Gvoke HypoPen and how to use it. They need to know how to use Gvoke HypoPen before an emergency situation happens. Learn more about why Gvoke HypoPen is in Arden's Diabetes Toolkit at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. Gvoke shouldn't be used if you have a tumor in the gland on the top of your kidneys called a pheochromocytoma, or if you have a tumor in your pancreas called an insulinoma. Visit gvokeglucagon.com/risk for safety information.
I was at work at his time of diagnosis. It was a couple of days before I was due to come home, and the job that I was working at the time, I could have come home if I wanted to, but she persuaded me that that wasn't an issue and it was only going to be a couple of days. And so I got on the internet like you do. And I was there, via Zoom at all the doctor's appointments, the hospital, the training session. They emailed me the paperwork. And then when I got home, I tried to hit the ground running. But as you well know, they didn't really tell me very. So yeah. It was a rough transition. Fortunately for us, it December, I believe December 12th. And shortly after diagnosis, we went on Christmas break. And so then I had him the entire time. And we were able to concentrate exclusively on figuring this out. And, I'm trying to Google what is a bolus, and Google didn't know.
I wish you would have
And
found
it
the
took a
defining
little
diabetes.
while.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it would have been nice,
Yeah.
but go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I spoke over you. I didn't mean to.
It happens. There's a little bit of a delay too, so I think it might happen a few times.
That's okay. I'm figuring it out. I'm getting it. So you are not. I'm sorry. Were you together at that time, or were you already divorced?
We were already divorced at that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm really wondering about the feeling of being that far away. Is it just something that you're so used to, or did the news of the diabetes make it more difficult than it normally is?
I didn't really feel that far away at the time. So the job that I'm on now, this is new. I've never worked Alaska before, but where I've been working in my career prior to this was the Gulf of Mexico, and I knew that I was only, at maximum a couple hours away by plane. I didn't fly home for this, but there was another emergency I had a little bit later, and after I told him like, hey, I gotta go, literally the next day, I was on an airplane. Mm-hmm. Here it's a little bit different, but being away, it's never really been easy. But this is the thing that I know how to do, so there's that. And I make enough money to where I can provide, and we can kind of do whatever we want to do. And now that I'm only working 6 months out of the year on average, when I'm home, like I'm just a stay-at-home dad, which I'm remembering now. Question you asked. So the custody arrangement that how we have it written currently is I pick him up on the way home from the airport and I drop him off on my way to the airport. I have him 100% of the time when I'm home, and she just has him while I'm at work.
How does that work for him, do you think? Does he like that?
I think he likes it. The first year or so, I'll say the transitions were hard. He would cry a little bit when it was time to go to my house or hers. And, he missed us, but I think he's starting to kind of get used to it. I speculate he might enjoy the transition a little bit because my rules don't exactly match up to her rules. And, he gets to do different stuff when he's over there than he does over here.
Yeah.
So
that sounds,
I think he likes it, for the most part.
It's different. I was just wondering, because there's a long stretches. How did you end up in this profession?
Well, I was in a bar. Literally, I was in a bar, and I ran into these couple of guys that I knew from high school. And this was a few years out of high school at that time. And, I wasn't making a whole lot of money. I was on a year off, quote unquote, from college. I was complaining about I wasn't making very good money. And one of them had this opportunity to go and do this job in Iowa. It was a repair work job. And so went out there and ended up talking to another friend of mine from high school who knew about maritime. So when that job dried up, I was like, well, how do I go on boats? And, I got licensed to do what I had to do. I ended up running into a guy randomly at a mechanic shop who told me that he knew a guy who could get me hired. And so I packed up my stuff. I hopped in my truck and I drove to Louisiana and crashed on this guy's couch for like a weekend. And by Monday morning, I had a job washing dishes. And then that turned into another job, which turned into another job. And eventually, here I am,
Then you meet a woman in that bar again a couple of years later? Is that how it goes?
The internet. I found this one on the internet, because I can text. Pretty good at that.
Yeah. You come off well in texting, do you?
Oh, yeah. Much better than in person.
By the way,
it's a disaster.
I hope your current wife didn't hear you say this one because it does make it feel like there'll be another one.
They're all going to hear this.
I'm sure that's not what he meant. I was just teasing. Okay.
Yeah.
So he's diagnosed. You get home eventually. He goes right to you. So is that difficult for your ex because she's not getting the information, or do you guys have a pretty harmonious situation where you can talk?
Not harmonious all the time, but for the most part, I do my best. Not saying I always succeed, but I do my best. And I really can't speak for how she felt in the moment, but she did drop him off. One detail that I failed to mention was that my mom had driven down and was there in the ER with my son and the ex-wife, going through all the stuff. It was kind of the transition. She came and stayed with me over the Christmas break, and so between the two of us, we kind of figured it out. And that's also how I came to know about the Juicebox podcast. Was she found it and sent it to me, and I was like, I don't have time for any podcast. But eventually I did listen, and literally you changed everything for me. Like, if I hadn't listened to the podcast, I don't know where we would be and what we'd be doing. Like, it was 100% the podcast why we've achieved any form of success at all.
Oh, well, we'll talk about that. But now's the time when I'm going to say you should send me some, like, I don't know, crab legs or something like
that. If only we could.
If you're feeling that good about it. By the way, because I'm just going to wonder until I ask you, do you like seafood, or has the job made you hate it?
I do like seafood, which is pretty legit. And the seafood here is phenomenal. Literally, we go, so the cooks can come down and they're just like, I want that fish and that fish and that fish and that fish. And from the time it's caught to the time it's in front of you, it's like 2 hours.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. I tried to explain to somebody, Gregory, who lives in the middle of the country, that the seafood they have is not really seafood. I'm like, yeah, like, no, that's been frozen for a year and you're eating it now. It's terrible. And they're like, no, it's good. I'm like, you gotta go towards the water once in a while so you know what's happening here. Like, go to the coast. But anyway, all right. I was just gonna wonder if it had ruined it for you or not the whole time. But let's get back to how terrific I am. You found the podcast, and then what happened then?
Well, I just started, cherry picking a little bit. I don't remember what day it was. I wish it did. I'm not great with dates, but I just started listening, and then you had just began the Defining Diabetes series, and so I listened to what was available at that time, and then every so often I'll go on and download 6 or 12 episodes and listen to them back to back, and through you I've learned about a lot of stuff. Then incidentally, one of the things that I do is I buy a lot of books. So I had bought Sugar Surfing, and I had bought Think Like a Pancreas, but I hadn't made it quite that far down in the stack. Mm-hmm. But, I eventually did read both of those books. And then, I got the Gvoke HypoPen because of you. We got, oh my God, I'm totally blanking on the same meter that you use.
Oh,
the Contour.
The Contour? Yeah. Hey, you know what? The people at Gvoke would like it if you said, I got Gvoke HypoPen. They don't like the word "the" for some reason. I don't know why. They've never explained it to me properly.
Interesting.
If I could just get the whole world to talk the way...
I got Gvoke HypoPen.
Isn't it awkward?
Yeah, it's a little clunky.
Oh, Gregory, it took me months to teach myself not to put the word "the" in front of it, and still I have trouble remembering. But anyway, one day I'm going to just have a lawyer on here to explain that. It's going to be a whole episode of why you can't say "the." I'm always stunned by it. So you're finding meaning to words that you didn't know before. You're finding out about tools that you didn't know existed. Like, that stuff's valuable. Did you get any actual management ideas from the podcast? And what was your management style like prior to the podcast?
Well, I learned about pre-bolus from the podcast. They didn't tell us about that in the hospital in our little crash course. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. They told us about carb counting. They didn't tell us that we could change our dosing strategies at all. They didn't tell us that we could change our dose at all. Yeah. So I can specifically remember being terrified. They had told me, this was the day they told me about the 10-20-30 rule, which I don't know if it's universal or not. But if he's in the hundreds, you should pre-bolus 10 minutes before. If he's in the 200s, you should do a correction. Actually, they called it a correction dose, 20 minutes before, 300s, 30 minutes before. And so I attempted to do that. This was my first correction dose ever. And, I'm terrified. And I did the math wrong. So I gave him, something around 4.5 units, and that was not appropriate. And I didn't know what to do after that. Like, they didn't tell me what to do. And so I'm like, pushing juice on him and, trying to keep him calm, but I'm just, like DEFCON 1 or whatever the highest level is. Like, I'm freaking out, which of course we ended up having this crazy rebound, which I was happy to see because I didn't know if he was going to come up or not. It was not fun that time.
Gregory, I have to tell you, very surprisingly, a moment ago, you said that in the beginning you were making a correction dose and it was scary and you used too much, and I almost cried. You brought me right back to the first night I was home from the hospital with Arden, and at like 4 a.m, she needed insulin. Her blood sugar was going up, and I was like, I have to do something. And the panic that I felt, like, literally just came back in my chest now. And that was, man, a long time ago. It was like 17 years ago. And while you were saying it, I felt like I was sitting on the floor holding that vial again. That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah, I was also sitting on the floor holding the vial and holding him, and like, dude, it was the worst.
Yeah.
And I try to be a prepared person, in general.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I didn't have any resources. I had no idea what I was doing, and I'm not used to that sort of feeling.
Gregory, I think if I was 28 and on Instagram a lot, I would say that I have unresolved trauma that I wasn't aware of.
Yeah, maybe.
But I'm 52, so it just gave me the willies for a second, and I'll be all right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. All right. So you're learning, but are you, and I'm sorry, you said she told me about the podcast, but I wasn't sure if you meant your mother or your ex.
Oh yeah, my mom.
Okay. Did your ex find the podcast as well?
Yeah, I told her about it.
Do you think she listened? Probably not, because you told her about it.
a couple of times.
Okay.
Yeah. She may have tuned in a few times.
She doesn't like me? It's okay to say.
I just don't think she likes doing the things that I tell her to do or suggest.
I understand. Yeah. I'm married, by the way, and that same thing happens here. So if I say it, it's not a real thing. You mentioned that it was not your inclination to begin to listen, which I understand completely. Like, I honestly think if someone came to me and said, there's a podcast about diabetes you should listen to, I don't think I would listen to it. But what pushes you over the edge? Like, what happens where you go, well, maybe I'll try this thing I'm not inclined to do?
Well, maybe desperation, or like I would just go into every avenue. But I had this idea in my head that podcasts were frivolous.
Mm-hmm.
They're just, I didn't know that anything of substance could be on them. Let's say.
No, I understand. I have to be perfectly honest with you. I'm a person who's been making a podcast for 9 years, and I would probably think that still. Seriously, like, why would I? It's a big assumption that somebody would sit down and put real information into something like this, and hope that someone finds it, etc. It's a leap to me. Yeah,
I'm glad that I made the leap, and I was wrong. I'll admit, there is definitely value in podcasts, and now that we're on the other side, so to speak, I mean, I don't know where the idea came from, because TV can be good and bad. There's good programming, there's bad programming out there, but the thing itself isn't inherently evil. It's just a thing.
Yeah. I hear you. Listen, I've heard a lot of bad podcasts, so I'm sorry. I just thought of one. I feel like someone should sneak into this person's house and steal their microphone. Like, it would be like a public service if they did that. Anyway, okay. Any autoimmune in the family?
None that I know of, which was the other thing I failed to mention. So no type 1 in my family or hers. I have come to learn, and actually it was from you, that preeclampsia is autoimmune.
Is it really?
And yeah, you spoke about it. You and I don't remember what episode, but you were speaking to a woman who had preeclampsia, and she had, I don't know, read some research paper, and you had a discussion about it.
Yeah, how about that? I forgot it too. On the basis of these findings, we hypothesize that preeclampsia is a pregnancy-induced autoimmune condition characterized by the presence of disease-causing angiotensin receptor activating autoantibodies. How about that? That's right from the National
Yep.
Institute of Health, and probably the second time in my life I've read that, and don't remember the first time I read it. But that's no kidding. And did your ex have that during the
Yes.
pregnancy? I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, she did, and her sister did, and her mom did.
Wow. How about that?
Yeah. Hmm. So we didn't know it was autoimmune, but she just knew that it ran in her family, and so the child that we have together is her first and only child, and so she's like, "Oh yeah, this might be a thing," and turns out that it was. But everything turned out fine.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, that's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up again. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, in your note to me, you said that you wanted to talk about the problem of helping a child with type 1 diabetes when you don't have it yourself. That's a pretty specific thing to say. So I was wondering what made you think that?
Well, it's just something that, for one, I find kind of interesting, but, I know that it's something that you could relate to. It's a thing that we both have. And actually, I was listening to an episode, one of your podcasts, just yesterday, a day before, and you were talking to, I forgot his name, but anyway, you were talking to a guy who was an adult that got type 1 when he was a kid, and you asked him about, do you think it's less valid listening to a guy who doesn't have type 1, as a caregiver? And he's like, oh no, it's not an issue. And how you want to understand what it's like for a person who has type 1 and how the perspective is different for someone as a caregiver. And what I wanted to tell you is that Dr. Jordan Peterson, in his first book, The 12 Rules for Life, one of the rules is to take care of yourself as if you're someone you're responsible for. And so it's this idea that you take better care of your child than you would for yourself is kind of universal. So universal that it's one of the things he specifically mentions.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it feels obvious to me that you should do that, right? But
yeah,
it gives you I like my perspective on diabetes. Like I asked, I think it was Mike I asked that question to recently. Was it like an algorithm episode you heard that on maybe?
Yeah, I've been listening to the algorithm episodes a lot lately.
Okay. And the reason that feels very important to me is because I don't mean I'm not denigrating anybody, but I've seen a lot of content come from type 1s about type 1. And I've always thought, their perspective is so, I'm going to use the wrong phrase here, and then it's going to sound like I'm being harsh, but I'm not. But they're kind of up their own ass a little bit, if that makes sense. Am I using that correctly?
Yeah, I'll take it.
Okay. And so it's their perspective is so me-centric that I think they see what's happening to them, which, by the way, is completely legitimate. But they're seeing what's happening to them, and they're feeling how they feel. And so then they have all these human emotions mixed in with it. And that gets in the way of them taking care of themselves, which happens to me, by the way. Gregory,
everybody.
Yeah, Gregory, I'm getting a toe surgery next week. It's no great shakes to tell you that it's probably not going to be a big deal. I'm going to be under for 45 minutes, and my toe's going to be better when it's over. But if you heard me talking about it for the last month, you would think I'm having my brain removed and put into a dog. So, and that I'm really hoping the dog can survive with my brain in its out, because I'm worried about it. I think about how it's going to hurt. What am I going to have to do afterwards? What am I going to have to do to care for it? How the hell am I going to take a shower? I'm not allowed to get my foot wet for blah, blah, blah. Just on and on and on. I'm up my own ass about this thing.
Yeah.
If you heard the doctor describe the surgery, you'd say to somebody, I don't even know that it's really surgery. It sounds like they're going to make a small incision on the guy's toe. They're going to clean out a joint and knock off a bone spur, and they're out of there in 45 minutes. Do they even need to put him to sleep for this? And so anyway, when this happens in type 1, they put out all this content, and the content can feel very scary or a little woe is me sometimes. And it lacks a third party perspective. And so I've always thought that my perspective on this was, unique, obviously, but moreover, it was always a little dispassionate. And I don't mean that in a cold way. I mean, like when you're low, when a person with type 1's low and they're in a panic, they can't sit back and, be philosophical about what's happening. And
right.
I can. And I thought that was a valuable perspective. Anyway. Yeah. Anyway, anybody who heard up their own ass and is upset now, I didn't mean it like that. Just relax. And by the way, it's always good to tell people to relax. They love that.
Yeah.
Relax, calm down. Always the way to go in interpersonal communication. I'm thinking you said you're so much better in texting. We should have texted this back and forth, and I could have just turned the transcript into audio later. If you would you
that would have been legit.
If that didn't sound like it would take so much time, maybe I will try that one time. I'm going to write that down. That's a great idea. Hold on a second.
Hey, go ahead. Let me know how it works out.
Text to speech interview. So I conduct an entire interview by text, and then I translate it into speech. All right. I'm thinking about that.
Have an interview with Bard or Chat GDP, whatever that's
GPT.
Yeah.
Is that it? GPT? CPT? No, wait. I don't know what it is. Anyway. AI? I don't know how
AI.
The AI. Meanwhile, I just found a company. I make transcripts for the podcast, but this is something I never talk about that I always tell myself I should talk about. But each episode of the podcast has a transcript.
Yeah, I just found that out.
Yeah, and it's online, and you can go listen to it. Each episode of the podcast has its own webpage on the juiceboxpodcast.com, and there's a transcript there. But I just found a company who is more centric to podcasting. So they're going to provide a transcript, and then each episode will have its own chatbot. And you can ask that chatbot questions about the episode, and it works surprisingly well.
Game changer.
Yeah, so I'm going to start with the series. It's expensive, so I'm not doing the whole podcast right away, but I'm actually starting doing it today. After I record after I record the podcast. I've got symbols on my and I'm cooking with my left hand here. But after I make this podcast with you, I'm actually going to upload the Bold Beginning series and get it translated into this audio and put chatbots up for it and everything. So that's part of what I'll be doing today.
Oh, wow. That is so exciting. I can't wait to see it when it's out.
I have a lot of hope for it and my fingers crossed. And I just sent them a lot of money last night, so it better work. I better be right about this.
I hope so, but I could see that being incredibly useful, especially for somebody that was newly diagnosed and they're trying to put it out there, learn about it, and I don't know. It seemed like Google was working against me, but to have something text-based where they can search keywords and it hopefully directs them in some kind of way to where they can get help. Oh my God, dude!
Right? It's if
I only had that.
I'm also pushing the company to. So right now you get a bot per transcript, and I'm assuming that's why it's so damn accurate. But I said to them, I'm like, if I could just group together 20 transcripts for the whole series, and the bot would go through the series, I'm like, it would be a big deal. And I am thinking, by the way, Gregory, exactly on the lines that you are, which is, imagine if you could go to an app, imagine there was a Juicebox podcast app, and you just could say, what does bolus mean? And you would get an audio return and a text return. And so if you wanted to go listen,
dude, you're blowing my mind.
Yeah, I know. I've been trying to explain to people how cool this is, and no one, everyone's looking through me. I don't know. It seems like a waste of money. I'm like, no. I'm like, this is a thing. I already started talking to my son's my son's like, I want to start making apps, on the side to practice my coding. I'm like, make an app for the podcast. I'm like, here's what I want. I want you to be able to listen in the app. I want there to be widgets for fat and protein, for setting basal insulin, that kind of stuff, all in this one app. So anyway, I'm working on that. It's expensive.
Yeah.
I need a real app. What I need, Gregory, is to have saved the life of a child of an app developer. That's what I need.
Yeah.
Then I need them to send me a note and say, hey, I can make that app for you. Anyway, we'll see what happens.
There's got to be one. With your reach, there's got to be one.
Just one kind app developer whose kid has a better life now because of me? Come on. Where are you at? Anyway.
Yeah.
I'm working on it. I really am. I think about this podcast a lot. So, and by extension, I'm thinking about the people who are listening and how to make things better for them. And I'm trying to make it future proof too, so that, because I'm going to get old.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I'm working on it. In your note, you talked about the importance of making friends with diabetes, both parents and for your child. I was wondering what made you bring that up.
Yeah. Well, we're still struggling with that. But, like I mentioned earlier, we didn't really have anyone in the family that we could lean on. I did find out later that I had a former brother-in-law who had type 1, but by that point we were already doing fairly well. But just having somebody to talk to about it, not even necessarily somebody that was more advanced, although that would be nice, somebody to give advice, but just somebody to talk to how difficult it is and just how life-changing. And it's just, I don't know if my experience is unique. I don't think that it was, but incredibly isolating. So the positive thing was that I had my immediate family, to kind of lean on in that time. And, then they, lean on me. And so, between us, it kind of drew us close together. But for my son, he's still the only type 1 in the family. And so he kind of feels different,
Yeah, alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've attempted to, meet other kids or whatever. And, that's nice, but
it's a little weird, right? To seek out a person just because they have diabetes. And then, like, what if they don't like the same movies as you or whatever, and you don't, like, you have nothing in common with them other than diabetes? Like, is that what you're getting at? It's hard to find people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I can tell you about that is that Arden knows one person with type 1 diabetes.
Really?
Yeah, personally, and she's never met her. They're friends online. And the only reason she knows her, I think, if I'm remembering the story correctly, is the girl reached to Arden on Instagram thinking she was reaching to the podcast. And that's how they met. And they're very good friends. They just,
oh, wow.
Yeah, they've never met each other in person. So
how strange.
Yeah, it's just the weirdness. Now she said, like, there's kids in high school who've had diabetes that she's never met before, even though the high school wasn't that big. At college, someone said something to her one day about, like, oh, that's an insulin pump. A friend of mine has diabetes, and she mentioned a person who she's like, oh, I know that person, like, tangentially, but I've never really, like, I'm not friendly with them, but they have type 1. But she doesn't, it's hard. And if I've learned one thing from the podcast is how valuable it is to have other people with type 1 in your life. And yeah. I think that, I'm not a big, this is going to sound strange for me. I'm not a big proponent of replacing in real life with online. But
yeah,
in this situation, when it's such a specific ask, I can't say enough about that Facebook group and the friendships that I see people building in there. And, they end up meeting each other in real life. And even if they don't meet, just seeing them interact online seems to be very comforting for people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you in that group?
Yeah, I am in the group, but incidentally, I don't really like Facebook very much either. So
you're a boy too.
I think I am a boy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't love Facebook.
Yeah. Once upon a time when I was younger, I used to go on Facebook a lot. Just needless drama, and, like, I don't care what you had for dinner. I went on there, like, I kept it longer than I probably should have because, you keep up with family or whatever. But I deleted it for like 4 years, and recently I did turn it back on. I think it was actually to join the podcast group.
I have to say, the private group for the podcast is the least dramatic place on Facebook I've ever seen, which is also uncommon for diabetes groups. But we very purposefully keep it that way. And like, I saw something pop up the other day, and I think there's part of me that just believes, like, sometimes on Facebook it's drunk o'clock, and so people get a little.
That's the thing.
Yeah, people get a little snippy at certain times. But as soon as it starts happening, I'm like, no, look, we're not doing this. Like, be nice, and that's it. And I don't remove comments unless you're not nice. And I know people are going to be like, well, who's the arbiter of what that is? And the answer is I am. But, if you're
group.
Yeah, if there people are being a jerk for no reason, or they look like they're trying to pick a fight, I try to understand first. And then if it just seems meaningless and unkind for no reason, then I'll remove it and I send them a nice little note that says, I need you to be nicer. Like, find a nicer way to say that, or please don't say it. And you'd be surprised how being direct really works. Like instead of being snippy back with them or whatever is people's inclination, I'm just very upfront. I'm like, we're not doing this. So, and then people learn that that's not okay there. And then for the most part, it just doesn't happen. But anyway, like, I'm not trying to push it towards it. It's just a thing I've learned running a massive group online, which is another thing I didn't think I would have to do in my life. But whatever. At one point, you didn't know you were going to be on a boat fixing a hydraulic pump, but here you are. So
this is true.
Scary. I know you want to talk about transitioning care, and I want to actually finish up the episode with that. But first, I really want to ask you: have you almost ever died? Have you ever seen anyone die? What's the scariest thing you've seen on that ship?
So I have not almost died. For the most part, it's fairly safe, and the vessels that I work on are, in good repair. This vessel is actually the first one that I've been on that wasn't brand new when I came onto it. So, that's a little daunting working on something older, not in a bad way, but I have not seen anyone die. There was, on the first vessel I ever worked on, someone did die, but they had a heart attack. It wasn't, anything to do with the vessel, other than, maybe they cooked him too much fried food. But I wasn't there at the time. So,
Gregory, what do you do with the body?
Well, we were at the dock at the time.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. So they were just going to leave, and they were going to wake him up. He was one of the office personnel, and he didn't wake up.
Oh, so my imagination is you're out in the ocean. You've got the body now. You need to keep it cold, so you wrap it in plastic and then drag it behind the boat. That was my idea.
Well, on this vessel, we have a enormous freezer, so I think that's probably the route.
Wow, isn't that crazy? Boy, nobody thinks of that when they take a job. One day I might be in the freezer.
Yeah.
All right. Is it as dangerous as television makes it seem? The job itself of
Alaskan fishing. So I don't work on a crab boat, so it's not like Deadliest Catch. Not to get on a soapbox about Alaskan fishing, but it's very different than the other aspects of the industry that I'm accustomed to. And dangerous would be the word that I would use. But I mean, it's not like we're losing guys left and right or anything like that. It's just it's a weird situation. I don't fully understand it, but in the rest of the world, there's a lot of safety laws and regulations that apply. One of them, and there's they wrote entire books full of safety regulations, and they're written in red ink, not literally, but because they're written in blood. Like, these laws get passed because somebody died.
Right.
One of them, and I'm going to try not to get on a huge soapbox about this, but one of them is called SOLAS, and it actually started because of the Titanic. So SOLAS stands for Safety of Life at Sea. And it's just laws saying, there have to be enough lifeboats for everybody. There have to be enough flotation devices for everybody. There has to be, some sort of beacon that if, the vessel were down, like, we could potentially locate the survivors, and, I'm doing huge broad strokes on this, but it's just, it seems like common sense stuff, but, without writing it down, then people aren't going to do it. And out that Alaskan fishing doesn't apply.
How about that?
To those regulations.
We use a different book in Alaska.
Yeah. It's really weird, So, I come from, this very professional world where, I mean, almost everything that you're required to do other than, incidental breakdowns is written. I mean, you can look it up. And here it's just like the Wild West. Oh, yeah, we're fishing. It doesn't matter. As long as we're catching fish. It's like, my goodness.
is it a good paying job for the people running the lines and throwing the nets and stuff?
It can be a good paying job for sure.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I would imagine you'd have to pay me a reasonable amount to do something like that. Is it cold, by the way? Like, is it cold there? I'm assuming yes, but.
Yeah, so I'm reading about this record heat wave that's hitting the rest of the country, but it's 56 degrees outside right now.
Wow. Yeah, it won't stop raining here. I mean, it's rained more this summer on the East Coast than, I don't know, 20 summers of my life combined, it feels like. It's just not. I wake up every day and it's been raining overnight. While you and I were talking for the first 20 minutes, I thought there was a freight train outside for a while. I just have a good microphone, so you're not going to hear it. But nice. it was insane. Just won't stop. Mm-hmm. Anyway, okay. So the last thing you asked about is transitioning care. So I'm wondering what is it you're seeing and what is it you're trying to get to?
I don't remember asking that question.
You were like, at the end, I'd really like to ask you some questions about transitioning care, like from, as he gets older. But that's okay if you don't remember.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay. Now I know. I thought you were talking. I wrote this a year ago, so I hardly remember the guy who wrote that.
This is my fault, Gregory, because the recordings I'm doing right now were scheduled as far out as I've ever scheduled a recording in my life. I made the mistake of I opened up July forward, I forget, September or something like that. Mm-hmm. So I'm recording with people now who are saying a lot. I can't believe I remembered to do this. But so now I've shortened the window. I'm putting people off who are like, I want to get on the schedule. I'm like, no, you got to wait till it gets closer to when I can actually do it. But anyway, is that something that, that
makes sense.
Yeah. It's been a thing. I guess, what's your son's level of proficiency? How does he do on his own?
He does very well now. When I first signed up for this, I was just starting to try to, give him a couple little responses. Gotten a lot better to where he can pretty much do it. He's not the best at counting his own carbs, but he can read the label and put it in there. He's not the best about pre-bolusing. He says that he just doesn't like doing it. Well, you have to.
He doesn't like doing it? Tell him none of us like doing it.
Yeah. Give it a little.
Gregory, you're breaking up a little bit now. That I think the ship might be underwater. Sorry. It's the first time listen, we've been at this 50 minutes. This is the first time it's been any kind of a real issue. But you said you started to give him some responsibility.
Yeah.
He doesn't like the pre-bolus, but he's doing well with label reading, stuff like that. I said to you, tell him that none of us like to pre-bolus. I don't think that'll make him feel any better. But yeah, so common stuff. Honestly, an almost 9-year-old who's had diabetes for 3 years, if they're reading labels and can understand how to count carbs and understand that pre-bolusing is important, even though they can't accomplish it, I think you're right about where I would expect you to be.
Oh yeah, I'm happy with where we are. But when I wrote that thing, I was terrified to ever let him do it. Yeah. It's just how do I ever let go and let him do this, knowing he's not going to do what I've been doing, because I have by that point years of experience. And so, the question was how'd you let go? But then I did it. So it's not so bad.
It's one of those things where if you're in that situation that you were in, you would think, Scott, I need a 5-episode series on transfer of care, how to let go, how to blah, blah. And the truth is they get older.
Yeah.
You teach them stuff, they learn it, and then life goes on, and that's how it is. And it works.
It happens.
And it just happens. Yeah. You're not, there's this idea that I think really plagues younger parents or parents of younger people. And that idea is that all of their decisions are somehow mapping out another person's life. And while that is true-ish, it's not as specific as you hope it is when you're doing it. It's not like I'll say this now so that they do that. all the stuff that happens, if you reverse trace it back to how it worked out, it's never the way you thought. Like you never get where you're going on purpose. There's like simple consistencies, be consistent, be available, offer love, like these basic ideas about parenting. They're the ones you need. Like the specifics, like you're not a puppet master. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think that people who try to do stuff like that end up really just manipulating people. And and I don't know that you can manipulate people into doing the right thing. I mean, if you could, the world might be a better place. And I just doesn't seem like you can do that. So yeah, my answer is some of your kids are going to suck at this when they get older.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that's anybody's fault either, but certainly if you don't do the things, which to me are just, I hate using therapy words, but like you model good behaviors and you stay consistent and that's how you teach your kids to do stuff. It's not really that hard or confusing. But I do know why you were scared about it, because I was really scared about it too for a long time.
Yeah.
But I had this podcast and people were asking me, like a very common question for people to ask me is, oh yeah, well, you're good at it, but how are you going to teach that to her? And for years I would answer, repetition. We're going to do it over and over again. We're going to talk about it. We're going to, just set this as an expectation. And I think she'll pick it up. And a lot of people would be like, yeah, well, good luck. Let's see that happen. I actually, the first time I spoke in public, Gregory, about diabetes, I'm never going to forget this. I was up on stage giving my little chit chat, and there was another person in the room watching me from the back. So other people with diabetes like to sit in my talks and scowl at me while I'm talking.
Okay.
It's a lot of fun. And I don't mean just people with diabetes. I mean like people who think of themselves as people who talk at those things. Because I would show up at them and talk much differently than everybody else was.
Right.
And I would talk about like, look, here's some standard things you can do that will make your blood sugars more stable and your A1C's lower. And you can do these things. And they'd sit in the back and go, this isn't right. And I've had diabetes for 30 years and blah, blah, blah. Like some of these people like believe in brittle diabetes still and stuff like that. And so I remember this person who was as popular in the diabetes space online as a person could be. And I got done speaking and I was just trying to get to a glass of water coming off stage. Like I was thirsty, and they cut me down as I was walking and like not quite finger in my chest, but pretty close. I have a question. And I was like, all right, what's up? I was like, can we answer this question over by the table of water? But whatever. And this is all well and good, but I grew up with diabetes and it's not that easy to be taught and blah, blah, blah. And what I realized was this person was angry that they didn't have the experience I was describing and that their life was harder because of it. And I felt like very compassionate towards them while they were talking, because they were mad at me, but I realized they were mad at maybe their own mom or life or whatever.
Doctor, wherever it was.
Yeah, something. And that's not going to work. And you're giving these people hope that, their kids are going to be okay, and they're not going to be. And I'm like, oh, I think you're wrong about that. But thanks for coming. And I won't be at your talk later.
Yeah, I suppose that comes with the territory as being it feels weird to say groundbreaking, right? But like just changing the status quo.
Right.
In a better way, it's weird.
All I really did, like in the beginning of all this, all I could take credit for is that I said the things out loud that other people wouldn't say out loud. That's all. Yeah. That's all I did. Plenty of people know how to pre-bolus their meals, and they do it for themselves back then. And if you ask them, hey, should I take my insulin a certain amount of time before I eat? They would not answer, because they'd think, well, I don't want you to take your insulin and then get low, and then that'll be my fault for bringing it up.
Right.
I looked at that same scenario and I said, it's unconscionable to know these things and not tell somebody else about them and let them struggle for their whole life. So I didn't make up pre-bolusing. But I very well may have been one of the first people who was willing to say it out loud consistently. And, you know, that's pretty much it. So, I mean, look how silly that is. Listen, you pre-bolus your meals, your A1C goes down a point.
Yeah.
You know, more maybe, but then you'll start seeing how insulin works and you'll start making better decisions about insulin. And before you know it, you'll have more stability all over the 24-hour period that you're living every day, and on and on and on. And that's how you learn. You learn by having the tools. Like, there were these tools for diabetes. They were locked in a bag. Nobody would let you have them. And so you're beating on a nail. You're beating on a nail with your wrist trying to get it to go in. And, you know, it doesn't work that way. So you give up because you don't want to bloody wrist. It's not that. Honestly, like, I'm happy to take credit for how good the podcast is and how much it helps people and all that stuff. But I didn't say anything crazy, you know. So a lot of people just weren't willing to talk. And honestly, I'm not mad at them. But I mean, maybe I am a little. Like, you had a platform, like, for the last 15 years, people have had different platforms, blogs, they've had speaking engagements. You know, Greg, you've got me upset now. I apologize for that. But
it's all right.
I was online.
I get up in arms too.
I was online yesterday, and this big organization was making a big deal about research that, oh my gosh, like, we've got to do something. It's 2023. We've got to do something. Research shows that most people can't achieve a 7A1C. What are we going to do? And I thought,
who is most people?
Research tells them that most people with type 1 diabetes have an A1C of over 7. We don't know. And they will wring their hands about that. And they will raise money off of that. And they will spend money. And they will do research. And they'll piss the next 10 years away off of that. And the answer is, give them a free podcast, or A1C will go in the 6s.
Yeah.
But nobody's going to say that out loud. It's my job and everyone's job listening to share it with people, because those people who could actually share in a minute with every doctor on the planet, they're not going to do that. They're just going to sit around going, woe is me. Diabetes is hard. People don't do well. What are we going to do? How are we going to help them? It's unknowable. I mean, I guess that's just
diabetes.
I hate diabetes. That. Right. Yeah. And it's not.
Yeah.
It's the way you talk about it. And if you don't, and if that person does know and isn't sharing, then I am mad at them. And if they don't know and they're doing this, then it's just upsetting that this is how the world works, where new people come into a space over and over again, find the same old problem and leave before they fix it. And then the next person comes in and thinks they've discovered something amazing, you know? And I don't know. Anyway, it's bureaucracy, and I don't know.
It's a bit of just society and people as a whole. And, you know, not to bring up the same person twice, but Dr. Jordan Peterson talks about this. Some people get a lot of social currency out of pity or feeling sorry for them, or, you know, oh, woe was me. And believe it or not, it actually makes them happy to talk about how hard they have it. And I'm not saying that, you know, all these people are doing that, but it's surprisingly common, and it's more common today than it was 20 years ago.
Yeah. Well, in the end, there's a very common business saying, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions.
Yeah, it should be.
Yeah. And most people they're so great at telling you what's wrong, but they don't do anything about how to fix it. It's just always, this is what's wrong. This is what's wrong. I'll go tell everybody this is what's wrong. They'll agree with me. And then we'll be in this kinship of complaining or whatever. And we'll all feel better because it's happening to you and it's happening to me. And therefore, I mean, listen, no lie. Like, I used to say on the podcast all the time, like, it's nice to know, because this is what I used to think about blogging. Like, people blogged about diabetes and they were able to share experiences, and other people could see, oh, other people are going through this too, which, by the way, is very comforting and it's valuable. But what I would expand on normally is, it's nice to know that you're not the only one up at 2 a.m. trying to stop a low blood sugar. But wouldn't it be better if your blood sugar didn't get low at 2 a.m.? And why don't we talk about that instead? Yeah, I'm not familiar with the doctor you're saying, but like, those two things make a lot of sense to me that you brought up so far. Yeah, just, you know, do something. Stop complaining. Just do something. I don't know. I'm very upset now, Gregory. We got to stop.
I'm sorry I got you there.
No, I don't know what you did. I just wanted free crab legs, and now none of that's even going to happen. What? Hey, I have one question. I'm in a bar.
Shoot.
I've got Alaskan, King, and Dungeness. Which should I go?
They're all the same.
Really?
Yeah.
Just crab meat?
Well, it's the same crab.
Wait, what are you saying? A Dungeness crab and an Alaskan king crab are not the same crab?
No? I thought they were the same.
I don't believe so.
Or actually, I think Alaskan king crab is actually several different breeds of crab.
And I'm just eating the legs. But you better stick to the motors. Yeah, we don't want you involved in the seafood too much.
I'm not the fisherman. I just...
Oh, my God. I have to stop myself from calling this episode The Gorton's Fisherman, which I won't do, but...
I don't identify as a fisherman. I'm an engineer.
No. Yeah. Had you gotten the crab question a little better, I don't know what I would have done. But, yeah. So, all right. Well, then we all are just picturing Quint and the steam coming off the motor and you down there banging on it, trying to get away from the shark. By the way, sharks, are they as scary as I think they are?
I've only actually ever seen one in the career. And by the time I came up on deck, they'd already, pulled the teeth out and it was pretty beat up.
No. Oh, they caught it by mistake or on purpose?
Yeah. Yeah, they caught it by mistake. It just got stuck in there. But it was pretty big, easily 8 feet long.
Wow. That scared the hell out of me.
Yeah.
How old are you?
36.
Yeah. See, there's a small group of us in our 50s whose parents took us to see Jaws when we were like 5 or 6 years old.
I saw it.
Yeah. Did you see it when you were 5? Because
I was pretty young.
Yeah. There used to be this little creek that ran behind the apartment I grew up in. And I had a reoccurring dream that shark would stand up on its feet, walk out of that creek, and come and kill my family. So that was a lot of fun. Jason.
I saw a thing. I believe it was a documentary, but I don't know. But they've directly attributed that movie with the fact that great white sharks are now endangered. Like, people hunted them because, like, well, I'm not going to get caught by Jaws. And now they're a protected species.
Well, Gregory, that makes a lot of sense because what you don't know about me is in my free time, I actually am hunting Godzilla. So for a very, very similar reason. Yeah, I saw that in the movie and I was like, we've got to do something about this. So, yeah, I've been after it.
Clearly, it's an issue.
Yeah, if I wasn't making the podcast, I think I'd have him by now. But it takes up a lot of my time. So I'm not able to. All right.
That in Lake Placid, people are going after the gators.
Really?
No,
that can't be true. What a bad movie. Oh, my God. You know a lot of bad movies. Good for you. All right.
I have a bit of free time on the boat to watch movies and read books.
How do you exercise on the boat?
Well, different vessels have different stuff, but for the most part, we do have exercise equipment. I prefer to use kettlebells because they're small and you can carry them around and it's not so bad. But the vessel I was on prior to this had a full Rogue Fitness set, squat rack, bench press, had the whole apparatus. We had a whole gym set up. It was nice.
How big is it? How long is it stem to stern? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, we can go with that.
Yeah. How long is the ship? Like, how many? Did they measure them by feet or?
They do measure it in feet. So the one that I'm on now is 244. The vessel I was on prior to this was an articulated tug and barge, which is like a tug and barge unit, but they're married. They never really come apart. That one, the tug was 140, but the barge was, I believe, 650. And then the vessel I was on prior to that was around 280 feet.
240 is like 80 yards. It's like a football field.
No, that can't be right.
That's not right. 244 feet equals 81 yards. Am I getting that wrong?
No, you're right, but
maybe you're wrong.
Doesn't seem like it's that big. Is it really as long as a football field? It's not as wide. It feels small to me.
How long does it take you to walk from one end to the other?
A couple of minutes.
Okay. All right. I don't know. I think you're insane for getting on the water in something you can't escape from immediately, but that's just how I grew up in my mind. So I don't understand people who get on boats at all, if I'm being 100% honest.
It's a job like any other. It's not so bad.
Yeah. Even a lake. You couldn't get me on a 12-foot pleasure cruise. I grew up with the Gilligan's Island. I don't want to have to eat coconuts for the rest of my life.
Coconut is delicious. You'll love it.
Yeah, for the first day. And then what? Then what? And I, you know what I mean? Like the old man was rich and he wanted everybody to take care of him. I can't be involved in all that, Gregory. I tried to do this with Arden the other day. I said,
go on a boat?
No, I tried to get her to recollect that she knew anything about Gilligan's Island, which she absolutely does not. And I said, just tell me, how long was the tour? And she goes, what? I'm like, in Gilligan's Island. And then I'm like, I'm singing the song. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, they say the length of the tour twice in the opening. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, never mind. I got angry. I was like, well, it was a 3-hour tour. And I walked away.
It was 3 hours. Everybody knows that.
Exactly. I was so upset she didn't know. I don't know. Her friend is over. They're like studying. It's summertime. Like Arden's making clothing and her friend's studying for something. And I just looked at both of them. I was like, you miserable little kids. Like, just watch Gilligan's Island one time. Like, I don't know how long I'd make it through an episode if I tried to watch it now. Probably about 8 minutes before I was like, what am I doing? But anyway, Gregory.
What show was this?
Gilligan's Island.
Oh, okay. All right. You cut out for a second, so I lost a bit.
That's okay. Is there anything we haven't talked about that we should have? I'm going to wrap up.
There's a couple things.
What do you got? Bring it up.
So, just something that I wanted to mention is that there is another loop out there that's not on iPhone. It's called Android APS, and that's what we use. You had talked about you were looping with Arden, and I looked up loop, and it's for iPhone only. I was like, I guess I don't get to do that. That sucks. But then I had an experience, not to make a short story long, but I was working a job, and I ended up having to quit that job because my son had an emergency and I had to come home, which, wasn't great, but I left, I got another job. There's plenty of jobs out there, so that's fine. And then I was like, well, I just can never go anywhere else. I just have to stay, at this particular job that I had at the time. But then I found out that Android APS exists. I don't know how I found it, but I did find it. And so, I went in and I built the app and made a loop, and it changed everything. Like we thought we were doing fairly well. And we were staying consistency, A1Cs in the 6s, and we got down to like the high 5s as soon as we got onto the algorithm. So just the Android app is called Android APS for everybody out there. And
it is extensively talked about in episode 924 called APS Wookie.
Yeah, I listened to that one.
Yeah.
Which I got to look up that guy's blog because what he's doing is amazing. Like he doesn't bolus. How did you do that? That's amazing. You just put in your carbs and it sounds like wizardry to me.
There's that. And there is the one, what episode was it? Where a guy was talking about how he thinks location services and some other things are going to revolutionize how people bolus one day, meaning that, and AI, like meaning that you could go to a Pizza Hut on like 5th Avenue and 7th Street, and you would bolus for it and have an experience and a need for insulin, and then go to a different pizza place, maybe a different time, have a different experience, and that the algorithm could remember the two, and that he believes one day you'll go and say, I'm having pizza, and it will remember which pizza place you're at by your location services, and then adjust your insulin based on your location and past experiences. And he was talking about it like, he's like, that's just very doable. And I'm like, all right, man, like get to work. You know what I mean? Like if you, get going. I can't believe I can't remember what episode that was, because that one fascinated me.
Yeah, that scares me. That sounds terrible. Like, all my big brother, government's watching alarms are going off. Like, no, don't do that.
Nah, they're not watching you. They don't care about you. Where is that episode? I can't find it. What one of the problems is I have so many episodes that when I search my own website, I'm like, oh, it could be any number of 20 of those. Anyway, like, I don't know if that'll ever happen or not, but when he was talking about it, I was really like, wow, that's really crazy. Like that idea of like, forget even location. Like, imagine if you told it, I'm at the pizza place up the street from my house, and it knew you're going to eat 2 slices of pizza from there because that's about what you usually do, and it's X amount of insulin, and you get a rise at this time, and blah blah blah. But that is literally different at a different place eating the same food.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know how. Again, like that's beyond my pay grade, but that anybody even thought about that was amazing. And back to your APS Wookie, that he's got his loop set up so he's not really announcing meals ahead of time, or even putting in insulin. Right, his algorithm is set up in a way that when his blood sugar starts to go up, it like stops it.
Yeah.
Am I remembering that right?
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
that's what I heard.
Yeah, that's crazy stuff. So anyway, that's hopefully where the future is going.
I hope so.
Yeah, it would be lovely. What else? What else did I not let you talk about?
Actually, I forgot now. It was just I was so stuck on the Android APS thing. I just wanted everybody to know.
Yeah. Oh, it's excellent. Yeah, if you have Android, check out Android APS. If you want to check out Loop, there are a lot of DIY options out there right now, and they're aggressively good. Arden's using Loop 3 right now, and I mean it's terrific. So all this stuff is terrific. It's all in its infancy, and it's should be very exciting for people who have type 1 diabetes or love somebody who does. There's work being done right now about getting pumps and algorithms on people with type 2 diabetes. These injectable, semaglutide drugs, GLP-1s, are crazy effective. I know type 2's using it, whose A1Cs are coming down. I'm on a GLP-1. I've lost 27 pounds in 16 weeks. I don't even have diabetes, and it works for me. I'm using Wegovy, which is specifically for weight loss. Like this seems like the beginning of something here. So
I hope so. And, it feels like, this is 2023. There should be more development, but I'm just glad that it's being developed now. And, I hope there comes a day where there's more open and free information out there, and I'm very glad that you're putting it out there, and that's wonderful. But there really should be like a pamphlet at the doctor's office, like, hey, we're not condoning this, but there's a podcast you can listen to, and here's a list of books, that people get good results out of, and blah, 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 if not offering a class like, hey, did you know pre-bolusing was a thing? Like, do you know what a bolus is? Like before you walk out of there, like, it's just, I just don't give.
It does seem like there's a better way. It does seem like there's a better way to do this, doesn't it?
Right, and it's so basic.
Yeah, I know.
Like now that we're doing it, it's like it's not hard at all.
Yeah, and I hear it in your voice too. It's upsetting, right? If you don't find a podcast, it's a ridiculous thing. Forget it's my podcast for a second. If you don't find a podcast, your kid's A1C's what, in the 7s or the 8s? You don't know what you're doing. You're scared all the time. He's getting high. He's getting low. It really changes the course of his and your life. And for the love of a little bit of information, like a little bit of how-to and a little bit of understanding, and everyone knows it and doesn't do anything about it, or they don't know. Those are the two levels of I mean, you get 3 different doctors. You get the one that knows. There's plenty of doctors who tell people about the podcast. But you either get one that knows and they share it with you. You get one that doesn't know, and so you're just led to believe this is it. Or you get the ones that know and don't tell people. They don't want to be the reason you have a low blood sugar. So they'd rather you be high your whole life and have a different problem later than be, like, oh, I told them to pre-bolus and they got low and now they're mad at me. And I mean, it's, I don't know. You got to have a little more. If you're going to be in this line of work, you should maybe have a little more balls. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's all. All right.
Just give medical advice.
Yeah. So Gregory, what's the rest of the day like? You're off, your shift's done, right?
Yeah, I'm done now.
So what do you do for the rest of the day?
I might read for a little bit and then just go to sleep and do it all over again tomorrow.
Gotcha. Does the time go by quickly, the 2.5 months, or is it drag?
Some days are quicker than others. It tends to drag a bit. Certainly my first day was a whole lot longer than my last day. I'll promise you that. But, you keep busy, have your little projects, and before you know it, the clock spins and it's time for you to be done. Then of course there's those days where everything goes wrong all at once. And it just doesn't feel like there's enough hours in the day to make it happen, but you do.
That's amazing. Well, I appreciate it. I'm a big fan of seafood, and so thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, I really do appreciate it.
I have nothing to do with that part. I just keep them moving.
It sounds like if the boat didn't move, they wouldn't be catching the food. So sounds pretty important.
There'd be less.
Right? Because there'd be people banging on things with hammers going, why won't it work?
Yeah. Or bloodying their hands on nails and being like, I was told this was the way.
I was told this was the tool. I can't believe it's not. Fascinating. Well, I appreciate you bringing stuff back around at the end, Gregor. That was very nice. If you hold on for 1 second, I just need to talk to you before we say goodbye.
Take your time.
Yep. A huge thank you to one of today's sponsors, Gvoke Glucagon. Find out more about Gvoke HypoPen at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. You spell that GVOKEGLUCAGON.com/juicebox. The episode you just heard was professionally edited by Wrong Way Recording. WrongWayRecording.com. If you're looking for community around type 1 diabetes, check out the Juicebox Podcast private Facebook group, Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. But everybody is welcome. Type 1, Type 2, gestational, loved ones, it doesn't matter to me. If you're impacted by diabetes and you're looking for support, comfort, or community, check out Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes on Facebook. If you're not already subscribed or following in your favorite audio app, please take the time now to do that. It really helps the show. And get those automatic downloads set up so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast.